Okay, good morning and welcome to just Daf It, Daf Yevamos, Maseches Yevamos, Daf Mem Vav, number 46. We are a day early, but it's 2 day Yontiv here, even in Eretz Israel, so I can't give a shir tomorrow. So I can't give it tomorrow night either. So I have to do it today. It's a short day. Let's try to get through it. Talks about today about a very interesting topic about the topic of Geirus. First, talks about the Geirus of an Evet Knaini, and then we're going to talk about a regular Geirus. A non-Jewish man wants to become Jewish. Non-Jewish woman wants to become Jewish. We're going to start discussing. A man obviously needs two things, Mila and Tvila. Is one good enough by itself? We'll talk about, obviously, a woman only has Tvila. She can't do a Mila. We'll discuss about that and maybe how it relates in Ben Sion to the topic of in order for someone to go from a non-Jew to become an Evet Knaini. Evet Knaini is really owned by a Jewish person. He's chayav in mitzvahs like a Jewish woman, not like a Jewish man. He would need a tvila and maybe also a mila. What is his status when he's an Evet Knaini? Is he like a woman or like a man, Jewish woman or Jewish man? What is the status of his tvila and mila? We'll try to get into that, touch on that in Ben Sion, and of course we'll discuss the remainder of that in Daf Mem Zayin, where the Gemara finalizes and talks more about what's necessary for a geirus, for a conversion. Let's start from the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Beis. The Gemara says, third to last line, Amarav Lokeach Eved Min Oved Kochavim. Someone who buys a slave from an Oved Kochavim. Right. No, a non-Jewish person has a slave. I mean, obviously this is pre 1865 or 1863 in America. Would have the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. This is not talking about American law. It's talking about Jewish law. There was a concept of avadim. We don't really have that anymore. By Jews, slaves. I mean, even if you don't want to say he's fully a slave. You could say, even if you want to say he's fully a slave, you could say that, I don't know, he's a nanny, I don't know, a housekeeper. You just pay him, he's whatever. There's Melachas Kiddush does talk about what the concept of an Eved is. There is a concept in Jewish law of an Eved. He wants to buy someone from a non-Jew and make him an Evet Knaini. An Evet Knaini is a Jewish servant. He's a Jewish servant that's not completely Jewish, meaning he has chayav and mitzvahs like you do a mila and a tvila. You acquire him, you buy him from a non-Jew, and you have to do a tvila for him. Tvila l'shem avdos, not tvila l'shem geirus, l'shem avdos, in order to be a slave for you. And you have to do a mila also. That's not really talked about over here. You have to do a mila if he's a man. Women only need a tvila, but a shivcha k'nayis only need a tvila. But it depends. The Gemara discusses it. Let's say the guy, when he's doing a tvila, in order to become your slave, he has in mind he wants to do a tefillah l'shem to become a Jew, a free Jew, not your slave. What happens? And when he's doing his tefillah, he has in mind he's doing it to be a free man. The Gemara says the halacha is even though you bought him to be a slave, he's no longer your slave. He doesn't have the halacha of a slave. My time. What's the reason? The Gemara on top of Memvavam and Aleph. Gufa lo kanile. An a non-Jew doesn't own the body. He can't own the body of a slave himself. All he owned was the rights to take what he produces, the work that he produces, as Maisei Adayim, whatever money he earns belongs to the non-Jew. So when he sells it, whatever he owned, Israel, that's all he can sell to the Jew. Okay, when the goof, the body doesn't belong to the Jewish person, even when he buys it. Okay, then when the kadam v'tavel l'shem ben chor and afkel l'shibudei, he could remove that lien on his Maisei Adayim, that right the Jew has to his produce. He can remove it because he's mashachar himself. He frees himself. It removes the shibud. The Rava, like Rava says, I'm a Rava. Hektish chametz v'shichr mafkim the shibud. If you make something kadosh, even if an animal is set aside to collect a loan from somebody, someone who owes you money, set aside an animal to pay for his loan. If he's makdish it, or someone else is makdish that animal, makes a hektish. Therefore, there's no longer a shibud. There's no longer an ability to claim it belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, or it's chametz. Um, and Pesach comes, right? It comes chametz, so chametz is no longer in your rishus anymore. If it's chametz, if it's, he gave a loaf of bread for you to collect your loan. It wasn't a big loan, and then it turns from the rest of the year to Pesach. We're talking about Pesach, right? We're in the middle of Pesach right now, so it's fitting that we're doing the daf right now. That removes the shibud. It's now chametz. Chametz is ownerless. You don't own it. No one owns it. It's hefker of a shikra. And also, if the owner is meshacher, the eved, he sets up as an eved to pay a loan, and he frees him. No longer does he have a lien on that property. Mafkim de shibud. Meisav Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda asked the following question: Meisav beBluria Hagioris. There was an incident with Bluria Hagioris before she was Jewish. Shekadmu Adev Tavu Lefaneha. When she acquired Avadim, when she was a non-Jewish, they were tovel to be Jews. But Meisav the Chachamim Amru Kanu Atzma Bnei Chorin. Chachamim said the halacha is she asked this question after she converted herself. This incident happened before she converted. So it says they became free people, they became free Jews. The Fanet and the Charela, the implication is only before she converted, but if they would have done this trick after she converted, lo. Amarava the Fanet, Bemistam Furish the Fanet, whether they had intent or didn't have intent, their tefillah automatically renders them a free Jew. La Charela Furishin Bistam lo. But if she bought them after she converted, and she was a Jewish woman, then they have to have in mind they're doing it l'shem tefillas ben chorin and not tefillas for avdos. Amar of Avia Loshano Ela B'Lokeach Min Ovik Kochavim. This only talks about if you buy from a non-Jew. Ovik Kochavim Gufe Kani. But if you buy a non-Jew, you buy him, not his slave, you would own his goof, and he can't remove himself through his tefillah l'shem chayros. T'chsev of Gam Bnei HaToshvim Agirim Imachem Mehem Tiknu. Pasuk says also the people that live, the goyim will live among you in Eretz Yisrael, around Eretz Yisrael, you can buy slaves from them. Atem konim mehem. So you see from this pasuk, you can buy from them. Below him konim michem, they can't buy from you. Below him konim zem, they can't buy from each other. Below him konim michem lamai, they can't buy from you. What does that mean? Ilem lamaisi yadav. If talking about he can't buy a right to your produce, whatever you produce, your goods, your services. Atu avichavim lo kani le Yisrael lamaisi yadav. He can't acquire that. Achsiv ol eker mishpachas ger. Pasuk in end of Behukosai says, or Bahar says that he's eventually one of the klolos. He's sold to a non-Jewish family. Mishpachas ger zel b'chavim. This sojourner, a ger is not a ger Yehudi, a Jewish convert. It's talking about a sojourner, a person who travels a lot. It refers to a non-Jew. So you see that he can acquire at least your ma'aseh yadayim. You can acquire the rights to your goods and services. Allow the gufe. It must be talking about he can't acquire your body. Become a rachmana atem konim mehem. But we learn that you can acquire their body. I feel a gufe. Baruch ravacha ema bekaspa v'tfila. He says maybe the pasuk is talking about not just where you do a tefillah, but also where you purchase him. That pasuk is talking about where you're purchasing him with not just money you're purchasing him with, but also you're doing a tefillah at the same time. Only in that case do we say you can actually be kova his goof, because you're doing the tefillah, and the tefillah is a shame. He didn't do it the shame b'nei chorin, so maybe you really can't buy a non-Jew. You can only own his ma'aseh yadayim, and it's only because he did the tefillah, not l'shem chayros. Gosh, the Gemara says it's indeed a difficulty. Amar Shmuel, when you acquire this non-Jew as a slave, you want to be tovel him l'shem geiros, you have to force him in the water. You have to push him down in the water, right? In order to ensure that even though he has in mind that he wants to do l'shem geiros, because you're showing him in the middle of this tefillah, you're pushing him into the water. So therefore, you're showing an act of avdos that you're making him for an eved. That overrides his kavanah to l'shem geiros. Ki'adam Binyamin avdi Ravashi, like Binyamin, who's a slave, when he became a slave of Ravashi, Ba'alad Bule, he wanted to be tovel. Masrein alayla Ravina Ravacha Brei the Rava. He gave it over to these rabbis, Ravina and Ravacha Brei the Rava. Amar lehu chazed manaychu kaboislei. I'm gonna make sure. I'm gonna ask if this guy becomes free, he has to become an eved. I want to be compensated by you. Ramule arvisa b'savore. They tied a leash around his neck. Arpule v'samsule. When they were tovel him, they tightened it and they loosened it. They tightened it. Arpule. Why do they loosen it? They wanted his entire body to be in the water, so shouldn't be something which interposes between him and his skin and in the water. Samsumulei, why do they make it tight? In order that there should be an act of avdus over here, they should have a leash around his neck to say, so you can't say I did it l'shem cheres. V'hadi the dali reishe mimaya, when he tried to pick his head out of the water, anchule zulta the tina areisha, they took a bucket of cement and they put it on his head. Apparently, it has to be forcible tefillah the whole way around. So when he took his head out, he also has to be shown that he's doing it l'shem avdus. So they put a bucket of cement around his head and they said, bring it to your master's house. So therefore, he did a tefillah l'shem avdus. Under Papa the Rava, Chazimar Hani Papa Bar Abba the Avi Zuzi l'Inshi l'Kargayu. There are certain impoverished people that they pay their taxes for other people. Some people can't pay their own taxes, meaning they're required to pay income tax. They just don't have enough money to pay the tax. People pay on their behalf. And Meshabdilu, when they take them as avodim in a certain country, when you want to free them, they need to get shikhr. In order to free an eved, you have to give a get, shtar cheirus. Do you need it or not? Are they really the avodim or not? Milso, it's good you asked me. If I would have died, I wouldn't be able to tell you this, but now it's important to tell you this. Milso, the right to these people is in the chest of the king, meaning the king collects taxes. He has a lien on their property to collect their taxes. The king, his statement, the king's rules are that someone doesn't pay taxes, he becomes a slave to the one who pays taxes on his behalf. So therefore, the king owns his rights to his Maaseh Yadayim, so he can make you an eved for your Maaseh Yadayim to whoever pays your taxes for you. And you would need to get shikhr. Rebchia Barabba, Iklag L'Gavla. Rebchia Barabba came to this place called Gavla. Chadzu Min Yisrael, the Ma'avran Megirim, Shemalu L'Tavlu. There were a Jewish woman who became impregnated from Gerim, from converts that only did Mila and not Tvila. Chaza Chamra de Israel. They also saw wine. They also saw their wine of Israel. The Mazga of the Chavim, the non-Jews would dilute it with water. V'shasu Israel, the Jews would drink it. V'chaza Tarmusin, the Shalki of the Chavim. They saw these beans that were soaked by of the Chavim. V'achli Israel, and the Jews would eat it. V'lamar l'hu v'lo midi. He didn't say anything. He obviously conceded these things were mutter. Asked me the Yochanan. Came from Yochanan. I'm going to say v'hachriz al b'nei Hashem zera. You know, it's wrong to be silent about it. Tell them the children from these relationships are Mamzerim, Al Yenam, Mishum Nesach. Their Yayin is also Mishum Nesach, or Stam Yenam, also Rabban, Al Tarmusim, Mishum Bishol the Chavim. The beans that were cooked by the non-Jews is Bishal Akum, and also Rabban, Al Fishainam Bnei Torah, because they're not people that can't keep the Torah. Al Bnei Hashem Mamzerim. So we're explaining all these three things why they're also according to Rabbi Yochanan. You have to, in order to be a full ger, you have to do Mila and Tvila. They only did Mila, not Tvila. Who they remain a non-Jew. We learned in the previous Daf, Rabbi Yochanan holds a non-Jew who cohabits with the Jewish is the child considered a mamzer. Why is there wine considered Yenesach? It's only a Gzera D'Rabbanan because it looks like Yein Nesach. It's really not Yein Nesach. It's not Stam Yein, because a non-Jew has to move. If the wine is not Mavushal, a non-Jew has to move the wine. But if he just pours dilutes into the water, so it's not exactly moving the wine. But since it's similar, so therefore we say to the Nazir who can't eat grapes, don't go in the vineyard because you'll be too tempted and you'll become to eat it. Here also, if we matir, people are going to be matir other things. The only reason he did that is because people are confused there. They don't learn Torah, and they'll learn from one, even though technically it's halachically mutter, but people will learn to other cases where it really is a problem of bishal akum and the limatir. So whereas habnei Torah shari, if people were Torah, it was a Haredi community, they kept the Torah. Shari Amar Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Mishmei the Rab call it nechal moshu chai ein bo mishum of the chavim. Anything which is eaten raw, it does not subject of the chavim. It's not eaten raw. You have to cook it 7 times. So even halachically, not because it's not Pnei Torah, halachically it's a problem. So where it says Rabbi Yochanan Gidach Lishton really heals like the other teaching in Maseches Avodah Zarah. The Amar Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Mishmei the Rab Kol Shein Olel Ashloch HaMalachim Lechel Bo as a pasim Mishum of the chavim. If it's not eaten on a kingly table, meaning it's not something a noble food. And these beans are food of paupers, so therefore it's not considered bishul l'chavim. Torah, and the reason therefore they can't is because they'll be confused and they'll even matir bishul akum when it is olah shulchan malachim. Habnei Torah, sure, if they were bnei Torah, they would know the difference. It wouldn't technically be mutter. Tanarabban ger shemal v'lo tavo. A ger, he does mila and he doesn't do tefillah. That's all harei ze ger. It just says a full-fledged ger. She came out tzinu babo tzinu. We found that our forefathers in Mitzrayim shemal v'lo tavlo. Right. We just read in the Agadah. It's supposed to say b'damai echai shtei damim. There's dam pesach and dam mila. They did mila, but they didn't do tefillah. We didn't find the men did tefillah. Tavo v'lo mal Rabbi Shlomo harei ze ger. Shol the opposite. He said that do tefillah. That's the most important thing. Mila is not important. It doesn't matter. She came out. Yevamos, the mothers, the woman in Mitzrayim, they only did tefillah. They can't do a mila. There's no penis to do a mila on. They hold you need both. Rabbi Yeshua nami nelach ma'avos. Why didn't you learn from the avos? So obviously it says dam pesach hamila. But Ezra nami nelach me'imos. Those who want to learn from the most, that tefillah is important. We can take main down in Efshar. Maybe you'll say according to Belezer, you can't learn from the most because there it's not possible to do a milah. So therefore you can't learn and say, oh, tefillah is good enough because technically if the women were able to do a milah, they should have done a milah. Tani, that's not true. How do you know Pesach that applies, Korban Pesach applies in future generations, in the generations after Mitzrayim, it can't come from Mani Meiser Sheni. It has to come in a chulin from unconsecrated money. Never Pesach Mitzrayim, never Pesach B'doros. It says the word the Korban Pesach by in Mitzrayim, and the Korban Pesach in future generations. Ma Pesach Mitzrayim in Baalam Nachulin. There was no Meiser Sheni money. They didn't have the Torah, so it came from non-consecrated money. Af Pesach Amar the Doros in Baalam Nachulin. So therefore, you learn that a Korban Pesach has to come from unconsecrated money. I'm later Akiva. Chidan Efshar Mashiach. Efshar Akiva said to the Lezer, how could you make this comparison? Right? In Mitzrayim, there was no Ma'aser Sheni money, so you can't learn one way or the other. But here, there was Ma'aser Sheni, but in future generations, there is a possibility of Ma'aser Sheni money. He says it doesn't make a difference. Basically, we don Efshar, Mishi Efshar. We do learn one from the other, even though in one case it's impossible. Ella, so the Gemara retracts, the Gemara says, Memvam and Beis, Ella, the Tavav of Alamal, Kuli Amalo Pligi de Mahani. Everyone agrees, even Relezer would agree, that Tefillah itself is good. Ki Pligi, because we could learn from the most. Ki Pligi b'mal v'lo Tavav. The Malchus says, if you just do a Mila, not Tefillah, Relezer, Yalif ba'avos. He says, from the forefathers, they only did a milah, so he would hold even a tefillah or a milah independently. We go to Yeshua, but Avos nami tefillah hava. Yeshua says no. The forefathers also did a tefillah. They did a tefillah, therefore tefillah by itself would work according to Yeshua by itself. Minal, how do you know they did a tefillah and when they left Mitzrayim? When it says by Har Sinai, which was a couple months after you see us Mitzrayim, right? It says they should kiddash them and they should makadosh themselves and wash their clothes. By a Balkari, we know he doesn't have to wash his clothes, but he has to go to the mikvah. Makom shem ton kibus. By Har Sinai, we had to wash their clothes. Didn't should toe and tefillah. Certainly, they have to be told with their bodies. The rest of the Dilma Nekiyas Ba'alma, maybe all the kibus by Har Sinai wasn't that they should halachically need a tefillah their begadim, their clothes. It was just they should be clean for Matan Torah. El Mahacha. Where do we know they did a tefillah? Yikach Moshe es Hadam Yizrak Ala'am. Moshe took the blood and he sprinkled on the people of the Gemiri by Har Sinai. The Ein Hazah below tefillah. We know that anytime we mention a sprinkling of blood, there was always a tefillah accompanying that. Yeshua, tefillah be most minalan. How does he know that there was tefillah by our four mothers, right? The woman who left Mitzrayim. Svarahu. He says it's logical. The Im came in my necklace it has to be. Otherwise, we know that when they left Mitzrayim, they became Jewish, right? Am Segula. So they must have done a tefillah. Am Reb Chia Barab, Am Yochanan, Olamein Ger Hashim will be Yitbol. He says you have to do Mila and tefillah, Pshita. Why does he have to tell me this halach? Yachid Ram, halach Gerabim. Relezer and Yeshua are Yechida. The Rabbanan say you need both. So, Man Chachamim, the Gemara says no, it is necessary. Who's the Chachamim? It's actually an independent view itself. Rabbi Yossi, the Sani of a bright Tarisha Baba Amra Malti V'lo Tavalti. A person comes around a basin and he says, I did a milah and I didn't do a tefillah. You just do a tefillah, and what's the problem? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda says that's okay because even if the milah is unsubstantiated by witnesses, we don't know if it's a milah l'shem geiros. A tefillah is enough according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi, you don't do a tefillah. You don't do just tefillah. You have to know that the milah was a successful milah with a shem gerus. The tefillah madbilin ger b'Shabbos. Because based on this, we can be tovel ger on Shabbos, divrei Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, either one is sufficient. So if we know for sure he did a good milah, so you could do tefillah on Shabbos. It's not. If you convert someone on Shabbos, so it's a problem of masakin mana, sort of like you're not allowed to fix a kli on Shabbos. You're not allowed to fix a person and make him a Jew. If he's already a Jew because he did a milah, so you can do a tefillah on Shabbos. Not a problem according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer Ema Bilan. He says no. The tefillah is critical to the gerus, so you can't do it. Amar lefichach madbilan ger b'Shabbos pshita. Obviously, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could. Kevan Rabbi Yehuda b'chad sagya. We know he holds one. Heichad malafanenu. If we know that he did a milah in front of a basin, we know it's a good milah. Madbilan my lefichach. Why do you say lefichach? It's obvious. Mao the same with Rabbi Yehuda tefillah ikar. Maybe he holds that tefillah is the main part. The tefillah b'Shabbos low, and therefore you can't do the tefillah main part on Shabbos. Kamasak and gavar kamashmala. No, the Rabbi Yehuda oha bayi. He only needs one or the other. Rabbi Yossi Omer Emat Bilan. He says you can't do tefillah pshita. The kevan number Rabbi Yossi tarti b'in, and you need both. It's going to gavar b'Shabbos lamatkina. You can't fix a person on Shabbos. Mao the same. No, Rabbi Yossi milah ikar. Really, the milah is the ikar. V'asim lo havai milah b'fanenu. There we're talking about a case where he says you can't do tefillah on Shabbos because there was no milah in front of a basin. If there was a milah, a good milah done in front of a basin, it was done the shem gerus, he could do tefillah on Shabbos, zeh b'Shabbat. He needs both, they're integral for a gerus. Amar Rabba, uvda hava be'Rabbi Chia Rebbe Rav Yosef. There was an incident in the house of Rabbi Chia Rebbe. Rabbi Yosef Masni Rabbi Oshia Rebbe. He said there was another rabbi there, Rabbi Yoshua Rebbe. Rav Safra Master Rabbi Oshaya Rabbi Chia. A third rabbi, Rabbi Chia, was there. Ger Shemavel Taval. A ger came who had a good milah and into a tefillah. Amalei Shayi Khan. They said, wait on Lamachar v'nit Balinach. Wait till tomorrow morning and we'll do the tefillah to complete the ger. Shmami not thas. We learn from this incident three things. Shmami not ger sarah shlosha. You need three. There were three rabbis there. So you need three people for a beis din. Shmami ain't ger shimon b'yitbal. You have to do it. Milah is not sufficient. You have to do the tefillah also. Shmami not ema bilan ger balayla. You don't do it. You don't do a tefillah at night. That's why he said wait till the next morning. Maybe you see if the fact this incident there were three big rabbis. You need three big rabbis to be a part of the basin. The Gemara says it's not approved. Dilma de klo. It just happened to be that was the ma'aseh of three big rabbis there. But maybe it's sufficient. Any three people could be a basin for gerus. We'll get more into gerus tomorrow. Stick around for Ian Ben Sion. We'll talk more about gerus coming up right now.